Hello, everyone. Mike Adams here with Navajo Generating Station Remembered. If you were employed at NGS for any length of time, you've probably seen pictures similar to the one here on the screen that show the Unit 3 main steam lead separated from the turbine. But have you ever wondered about the events of that night? Have you ever wondered what exactly was going on and what happened? Well, in this interview, I talked to Mark Avery. Mark Avery was the control room operator on Unit 3 on shift the night that the steam lead separated from the HP turbine. The unit was online and under load, and Mark's going to describe for us what it was like in the control room at that moment and talk a little bit about the aftermath of that event. Mark was a longtime employee of Salt River Project and started a Navajo Generating Station in 1974 during startup. As he's describing the events of Unit 3 that happened that infamous night when the steam lead separated from the HP turbine, I show pictures mixed in with the interview, and I'm going to put a link to each of those pictures in the description of this video so that you can go grab those pictures and have them for your own if you want them. So get comfortable, grab your favorite beverage, because I think you're going to like this interview.
I came from Moab, Utah to Page. I graduated from high school there in Moab, and my father had made a connection with a man he knew that started an auto parts store there in Page, across from Page Steel.
Oh yeah, who was that? Remember that name?
Chuck Manningly was his name.
Okay.
And his son was Jim Manningly. And so I went to work for them. I moved over and I borrowed my parents' camper trailer. And after I was there for a couple of months, my wife came over and we lived out at, remember Green Acres on the Highway Canal? Yeah. We moved out there to a lot, and it was so windy, we had to put a strap over the trailer and hook it in some tires and bury the tires so it would hold it down. So anyway, I worked for them for about 18 months, and they kind of got in a tough spot. So they let me go. And so our intention was to go back to Moab look for a job. My wife was still working at that little mall there downtown. I wouldn't call it a mall. It was they had a kiosk in there, and she worked at the photo booth in the kiosk, and then she worked for Ward's for a little bit. But so I thought, well, and we had one vehicle between us, and so she had the vehicle, and I thought I'll just hitchhike out to the plant. So I got to the junction that takes off on the highway that goes out of town goes by the plant. 3 or 4 cars go by, and then this SRP car stops, picks me up, and we're chatting. And I told him where I was going, and I just wanted to apply for a job out there, and kind of asking him questions about what are the functions, what's going on out there. And I didn't know very much about power plants. Got to the plant, pulls into the parking lot, and pulls into the plant manager spot. And it turned out to be
Dean. Was it Dean Johnson?
Dean Johnson. And he told me, go into the lobby, tell him you want to see Gene Blocker, and tell him I sent you.
Oh.
So that was pretty cool.
That's awesome.
Turned out, I talked to Paul Winters too. As it turned out, they told me it would probably be about 6 months. They just filled an OT class. It'd be another 6 months, maybe 8, before they'd start another one. So we thought, well, we can't wait around that long. There's nothing to do here. So we took off, went to Moab, packed up everything. We got to my parents' house, walked in the door, and my mom says, hey, just got a phone call from SRP.
Oh, wow.
I want you to call back. So I called and he said, can you be here in 2 weeks?
Really?
So, that was pretty amazing.
What year was that, Mark?
1974.
Okay.
I hired on October 15th of 74.
So was Unit 1 was online, right? Or had it just come online?
Unit 1 was online. Unit 2 was beginning to start up. I don't think they were at least 2 years away from startup, I think.
Okay.
Maybe a little bit less, because I went in my OT school was Charlie Rumback and John Devine were the instructors.
Okay.
And
I didn't know John, but I knew Charlie really well. You know, as far as work goes, you know.
Yeah.
Good guy.
Yeah, both of them were. It was an excellent school. I think they said this was going to be one of the longer ones, and because they were kind of tight for people as they moved through trying to staff everybody. And I can't remember everybody in that class. There were about 15, maybe more, which was pretty good size, from what I understand.
Do you remember any other names of people that were in there?
Oh, yeah. Bob Talbot was in my class.
Okay.
And Mike McGandy, Gary Spencer, John Lobbin, Gene Legate.
Oh, wow. Okay. Gene and I grew up together in Page. We were inseparable during grade school. Those grade school years.
Was that in Page?
Yeah, that was in Page. Yeah. Mm-hmm. He moved there just before I did. We moved there in 1960. And I remember our first grade picture together. You know, a couple of chrome domes. We both had butch haircuts, and we kind of looked like twins.
Yeah. I remember standing in line at the orientation aptitude testing in the HR building or whatever, the lobby there. And this guy behind me said, I was just one day from joining the Army, and that was Gary Spencer.
Really?
Or joining the Navy. He was headed Flagstaff to join the Navy, and they called him. So that was pretty interesting. And we crossed paths quite a bit after that too, within SRP.
Now, Bob Talbot went on to be plant manager. So he started in your OT class then.
Correct. Yeah.
Wow. That's quite a climb there. Kudos to him. Hey, we ought to explain real quick what OT means.
Oh, operator trainee. They called it duck school too.
Yeah, duck school, operator trainee. I think duck school was a favorite.
We were in there. They called it duck school. Maybe it came about because we used to go and tour the plant to different systems with instructors, and everybody would just follow each other, and it was like a line of ducks. So we got that's where the duck school.
That's right.
Came about. Yeah.
And remember, in those early days, we used to be able to park where we worked. Remember, if you worked in co-control, you drove out there and parked at co-control. If you worked in one and two, you parked by the distilled water tank there, and just go right into the power block.
Way all the time that I worked there.
So, yeah.
4.5 years that I worked there.
I interrupted your train of thought there. I'm sorry.
And the medium age, I think, I bet it was probably 24, 25. I don't know. There were some older guys in there. Most everybody was just, 3 or 4 years out of high school.
Yeah. Speaking of that, I've got that picture you sent me. I'll try and show that right now in the video when I go back to edit it. You know, that picture of you in the control room. That was awesome. That was a great picture.
Yeah. I don't know who took that. It was kind of goofy.
Yeah, it was good. That was the BTG board that I remember right there.
Yeah, that was the. If you look closely at the picture, those were the diesel guns. Yeah,
the oil guns,
and then that you lit off first,
right?
And then right below it were the mill controls and the feeder controls to the mills. Yeah. Yeah,
it was a great picture. So we'll make sure that we show that one a time or two in here during this.
I don't know when that board went away, but yeah, it's probably been replaced a couple of times before the end of the plant life.
Oh, yeah. So you hired on in 74.
74, went to OT school, worked with some good people at Navajo. I mean, everywhere in Salt River, but, some of there was Mike Hindmarsh.
Oh, yeah.
And George Watson. I think I was on Mike Hindmarsh's ship first. He was an assistant supervisor. He was great.
Yeah.
He wasn't much older than we were, maybe 6-7 years older than that OT class. And Gary Quilter worked with him.
Oh, yeah.
And I think Joe Castro was our shift supervisor for a while.
Yeah, I remember Joe.
Yeah.
Carl Seedig taught my OT class.
Seedig.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I thought it was going to be Mark Bailey. Mark Bailey's the one that took us all up there. You show up at the admin building, and then they kind of parade you up into the. Back then, we were in the that training room right next to the Unit 1 and 2 control room, and Mark Bailey took us up there. And I thought he was going to be our instructor, but then Carl Seedig made a grand entrance. That was in 76. So yeah, he was good people. Both those guys, Everybody up there
Yeah.
was good to work with and good to work for.
Oh yeah, it was fun. It was fun. The whole Navajo Generating Station experience, especially for a bunch of young guys. You had a beautiful countryside, beautiful lake, and a brand new career plant, and just tons of things to do.
Right. So you hired on in 74, and what was the experience like as far as promotions and, moving up the ladder, and how did that progress for you?
Quicker than I ever thought it would be. I was in the control room in about a little over 2 years. I was a control operator.
Wow, that's phenomenal.
Yeah. So that would have been 74, 76 and a half. I think I was in the control room, and I was control operator for almost 2 years.
Yeah, you were in the control room then when I started in 76. You were already running the ship.
Well, I may have been training in the control room in 76. So
yeah. So you made it into the control room, and experiences there. How was that for you? I mean, we'll get to the Unit 3 thing in a minute.
What was interesting is then's when we got into the startup of Unit 2. So there was a period of time when, of course, we worked rotating shift, but it was just 8-hour shifts back then. And there was a period of time, 1 8-hour shift rotation. I would come in for the night shift, and they had done all their testing on the turbine and the boiler and all the firing and everything during the day, and then they had tripped the unit off, and I'd come on, and our crew would put it back online.
Okay.
And I don't know if you recall, but when a turbine comes up, it gets up to speed, and then you synchronize it to the grid, and then you switch in the breakers and bring it online. There used to be a rail on the backside of the control room there called the bird rail. Everybody would perch. All the supervisors would be back there watching everything.
I remember that.
Yeah. It got to the point that this got so routine that I was the only, other than the Unit 1 operator, this was in the same room, Unit 2, it got to the point where I'd bring it up. I'd call PDO and say, hey, we're going to bring this unit online and sync it in. Nobody else in the room. So I got so routine to do that. Got a lot of practice.
I'll bet.
Startups are just great. I mean, that's where you learn things.
That's right. That's exactly right. I never made it to the control room. I started my apprenticeship before that, but I love startups. I mean, even in the basement, not on the boiler so much. The boiler was kind of boring to me. ACO, it was assistant control operator back then is what it was called. But man, you really get hopping down in that basement too during startups and trips. Things were moving along. And the challenge was always to stay one step ahead of the control room operator. If you worked with the control room operator a lot, you understood, what he wanted and where he was going next. And so it kind of became a game where you try and stay one step ahead. It was a good job. That was probably my favorite job at SRP, was working in that basement.
Continuous to this, there was actually starting up some equipment on Unit 3, and I was in the basement at that time. And Cody Black was the control operator. Man, he kept me hopping. I mean, and that's another guy. I learned a lot from that guy right there. Yeah. And I also was assigned to Mike Bennett about that time, and Ed Bigman.
Yeah, Ed Bigman trained. He trained me. Excuse me. He trained me on ACO. Spent a lot of time with him. Actually went to high school with him. He was a couple years ahead of me, but he was a good guy.
Yeah,
good guy.
Yeah.
So stories.
So we got to
go ahead.
Well, so I was in the control room from then on till I left, and we'll talk about the event. It didn't make me leave. What Coronado was starting up,
right?
And I wanted to get into instrumentation and controls, and things were kind of closing up in that area at NGS. So I thought, well, it might be an opportunity to just jump over to new crews over there. So that's when I left in late 78.
Okay.
Fall 78, and went to Coronado.
Were you still at NGS during the strike, or were you at Coronado by that time?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
I was on night shift during the strike on the picket line. So we'd go out and there'd be a little campfire set up and whatnot and play hearts all night long or something.
Right.
And, yeah.
Yeah. It didn't pay quite as well as being on nights before the strike and after the strike. But yeah.
No, it didn't. It didn't.
Fortunately, it didn't last too long.
I was out there on the line with Rusty, I think. Rusty Blinston.
Rusty Blinston, yeah. He ended up up on the dams.
Hydro.
I think he was at Roosevelt for several years, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Up there at Hydro, yeah. That was a while ago.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so the start of a lot of careers for a lot of SRP people there at Navajo, especially during that time.
It didn't really dawn on me until later, that how well that place was ran, and the training and the safety. It was it just made that whole thing, and right. I think you contribute that to John Rich, coming from a naval background, and he was big on both training and safety, and they go hand in hand. And you're talking about starting careers. Even if you left the company, I had people I worked with at Coronado that would leave the company and go someplace, and they'd say, "Yeah, I'm from SRP," and they'd get snagged right up.
Yeah, that's good. It's good to have that kind of reputation, in your background too. So that kind of experience.
Yeah.
So how long were you at Coronado? I didn't know you were at Coronado. I didn't know that about you.
Oh yeah, 16 years.
Oh really?
Yeah. So I went right into instrument. They called it an instrument mechanic position. Did that for about a year and a half, and then I got into an instrument technician position. And there again, excellent training during startup. I went through the control systems. That back then it was a Bailey boiler control and a Forney flame management, and went through with the vendors. So the vendors were checking out their system, and I got to go along with them and do all the communication with the field and whatnot. So that was great.
Yeah, it's good experience. That's great experience.
And about 1985, the media supervisor, they were building another unit that never came to be at Coronado,
right.
A third
unit.
And kind of got in on that. And then, I don't know, so many life changes occur. And by 1994, I was ready to leave. And I went from there, I went to TGD. It's called TGO now, Transmission Generation Operations. I went right into PDO as a dispatcher. And I did that for about not quite 2 years. And then Dave Murphy was the guy that hired me.
Oh, yeah.
And he asked me if I wanted to supervise that group. So I went back into supervision, which I kind of was relieved when I left Coronado. So they didn't have to supervise anybody, but sucker and score right back in. So, and still a lot of great people. I mean, Dave Murphy, and then the people from Navajo that were there besides me. It's kind of like old home week in some respects.
Right.
Well, going back to Coronado for just a second, Ron Shepard hired me to go to Coronado, and I worked with Smokey Alston, who was from Navajo.
Smokey and I were in a band together.
Oh, is that right?
Long time ago.
Yeah, man, what a good guy.
Yeah.
We were fast friends, him and his family, and we took vacations together and whatnot. Excellent. Bruce Jackson, Walter Tomlinson, Ernie Tomlinson. So, yeah. I worked for him. He was actually manager for a little bit. Walt Zales was. And there again, Gary Spencer was in the same shop as I was. So he came at the same time.
Okay.
Yeah. So then in 94, April 1st, 94, I started at TGO, Dave Murphy, and it's Mike Glover, Navajo, Robbie Anslow.
Yep. Robbie's still there, I think. I don't think he's retired.
I haven't heard that he's retired, so I kind of have to assume he is.
Yeah, he's in AGC now.
AGC. Yeah. Mm-hmm. I worked for Dennis Gerlach and Rob Consioka.
Right.
Just very professional people. Very good.
I agree. Those are good people.
Yeah. See if I leave anybody out here. I don't want to. Oh, some of the other people, just the engineers, Jeff Shaw, unfortunately passed away after a few years, but Terry Keeneman, Mike Gentry. I mentioned Mike Clever. Probably leaving somebody out, but
Mike was Mike was the manager when I was in PDO, when I was a dispatcher. Yeah. At least for part of the time. Yeah, he's a good guy. He was really good to work for and really good to work with.
Gentry.
Yeah, Gentry.
Mike. Yeah. He was
good guy.
Good guy. I think he's retired now.
Yeah, he and I actually retired on the same. I don't remember if it was the same day or the same week.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah.
What year? When was it?
That was in December of 2017.
Oh, okay.
Man, time flies.
That was the year after. Yeah, mine. I looked at my retirement plaque a while ago. It was June. I thought I retired in May. I think I left in May, but my retirement date was like June 4th, 2016.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's 41 years and 8 months of SRP. So I was in the power operations building for 22 years.
Wow.
But I went from PDO, AGC, and then I went to transmission services, and a lot of changes over that whole time period. The deregulation of the wholesale market of energy, and the integration of independent power plants into the grid.
Right.
And that all took a lot of contracts and analysis, and so I worked with SRP lawyers for some time on things like that. Learned a lot.
Yeah, I bet. Hey, let's circle back around, if it's okay with you. I mean, this is your time. If there's something else that you want to talk about before this, but I want to get to the Unit 3 incident where the steam leads separated from the HP turbine. And I know you were in the control room that night on Unit 3. I don't know if you want to go there now, or do you want to, do you want to take this conversation a different way?
No, that's fine.
Let's kind of set the stage for us. Okay.
Well, you and I were talking about when this happened, and it had to have been the winter of 77, 78, but I can't really remember exactly.
Yeah.
What month that was. So if anybody can tell you, that'd be good.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it was before that strike in 78. So I think you're right. Yeah. I think it was late 77, early 78, somewhere in there.
Mm-hmm.
You sent me pictures of that. And
that picture in the newspaper article, picture of me at the board, and it said that the Unit 3 would be up by the end of the week or something like that. And I think that was just before. I think that was published within a week before this happened.
Really? Okay.
I believe so.
Yeah, I'll make sure that I show that on this video too. Do you remember which control room you were standing in when they snapped that picture?
Was Unit 3.
Okay.
Oh, that was probably Unit 3 on the newspaper.
Yeah.
Newspaper picture. That was probably Unit 3.
Okay.
Yeah. The other one, I don't know for sure.
Well, why don't you set that up for us? Set up, that night of the steam lead coming off, steam leads, blowing off the turbine. Kind of set that up, kind of start at the beginning of your shift and walk through everything that happened. Not everything, but, just give us a good feel for what was going on and what happened exactly, get it right from you, right from the source.
Well, it started off as a typical startup after an overhaul. And we came in on the night shift, and we were on a hold for what they call a water hold. We were probably at about 30% load, somewhere in there. But until the water quality is at a certain standard, they won't let you go any higher. It has to be super clean water before it goes through the boiler. So we were sitting there at third load. Well, I kind of have to explain how the valving and the turbine works to explain why it happened. There are two main steam lines that come off the boiler, and they operate at 3,500 psi and at full operating, somewhere around 1,200 degrees. Well, 30%, they're probably about 500 or 600 degrees, but they're still at 3,500 psi. And those two lines go into what's called the valve chest. And the valve chest contains 4 valves. And on initial startup, those valves open sequentially. Mm-hmm. In other words, the number 1 valve, and it may not even be in any order. The one valve opens maybe 10, 15% before another one starts cracking open. And then they all kind of follow each other up. Well, at 30% load, we probably had maybe 2 valves closed still and 2 of them open. Okay, so coming out of the valve chest, then you have 4 steam lines going over to the turbine. And if you look at the front of the turbine, those 4 lines go in 4 different quadrants. And I don't, the sequential opening of the valves has to do with the way that the turbine warms up and maybe some other safety factors there. So at a third load, we're sitting there with 1 steam lead pretty well open and another one cracked open a ways. Unbeknownst to us and GE and SRP, we were sitting at a point, there was some frequency, some odd frequency set up, harmonics between the valves and the lines. Well, that frequency corresponded to the nature of the metal used for the bolts to hold the flange to the turbine. And trying to think about when this occurred. It might have been around 2:30 in the morning. Mm-hmm. I was in the control room. Nobody else. My ACO was up checking the boiler. My basement guy was off doing his rounds. And I was leaning against, remember the big line printers up there?
Oh, yeah.
You know, the big cabinets.
Yep.
And they stood maybe 2.5 feet high, or something like that. And I was just leaning on one of them, looking at a pulse.
Pulse is the paper.
Yeah, the paper, the SRP paper. And then all of a sudden, I was flat on my back on the floor. And the huge explosion. I got up. I looked. The Unit 3 control room had a window next to the door to go out onto the turbine deck, right. And you can look out the window and see the front standard of the turbine. I went up to the window, and it was that you could zero visibility, nothing
because of the steam.
Yep. Well, it was like somebody rubbed peanut butter all over the outside. Oh, okay. It was because the steam lead broke loose, and you're talking about maybe a 10-inch diameter pipe, maybe 2.5, 3-inch wall thickness. The bolts broke loose. The pressure of the steam bent back the pipe, and the steam shot up and hit the end of the crossover. And the crossover is where the steam comes out of the intermediate stage of the turbine and goes up and down to the low pressure stages. And it's very well insulated. There's probably a foot of insulation of the various kinds. There's ceramic insulation, and then like a fiber insulation, and then it's got metal slagging over that. It hit the end of the crossover, and it ripped the slagging off and pulverized all the insulation. And it just pulverized. It was just instantaneous. It was everywhere in the air. And first thing I thought, because we're trained, in our training, the GE schools we went to and the OT schools, is that turbine controls focus on overspeed. That's their main priority, is to prevent overspeed. And they do quadruple redundant controls to make sure it doesn't happen. Well, that's the first thing I thought. So I mean, who would have thought that the flange would look
Right, right.
So I took off and I went out the back door of the control room and I looked over the edge, and this wall of pulverized dust was just rolling off the turbine deck. And I could see my AI. I think it was Troy Tackett was the
I remember Troy, yeah.
Yeah. And he was going back and forth, kind of like me, not know which way to go, you know. Right there, I thought, hey, I'm not dead. It wasn't an overspeed. Came back in. By that time, the turbine had tripped on vibration, tripped offline. And then, of course, everybody comes up and goes, what the hell happened? And it took a long time for that dust to settle. Even by the end of the shift, there were still particles of dust in the air. And you show the pictures on there. You can see the bolts, how big the bolts are.
Right.
And a lot of that, the turbine parts that are laying on the deck are from Unit 1 because they were doing an overhaul there. So they had the turbine tore apart on Unit 1. But when it happened, when it popped loose, Unit 2 operator thought it was his turbine and he punched his unit off. And there were reports later that people in the roundhouse on the train felt it jolt the building out there.
Really?
The next day, a GE rep, Charlie Patu was his name.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, there's a name. There's a name I haven't heard in 40 years.
Yeah. They decided to check one of the flanges on Unit 2. They had already brought it back online. I don't think it was at full load, but it was back online.
Unit 2.
Unit 2. So he had them take the lagging off, the covering for the flange and the pipe. And he had like a little prospector hammer or something. He got up there on a step ladder and he tapped one, and the nut fell off in his hand.
I remember hearing about that.
Yeah. So, yeah, that was scary. So he said, trip this unit immediately. So they tripped that one off. So there's definitely a problem, you know. Yeah.
Now, Unit 1 was on overhaul, but everybody had been given the night off. Is that right?
I don't know. I don't know about that.
Okay.
I don't know. Usually you don't, unless you request the night off, you don't get the night off because of overhaul.
Well, that's true. That's true, too.
Yeah.
Somebody had mentioned that. I didn't remember who, so I just wanted to bring it up.
Yeah. I know the Unit 2 guys, they crawled under their desk.
Oh, I'll bet.
Yeah, their operating desk.
Yeah. That's a scary event, you know, and you don't know, like you said, you don't know what's going on.
Yeah. And this was downstream of the sequential opening of the valves. And so the initial pressure was 3,500, about 600. So it was lower pressure, of course, going to the turbine because you got an open valve going into the turbine.
Right.
But still enough. Amazing how powerful that medium is. 3,500 pound water at 600-700 degrees.
I've got a picture of one of those bolts sheared off. I'll try and show in this video too, and you know, give some close-ups of the steam leads after it's separated. You can see the bolts there are separated as well, and so I'll try and get those on here too. But remember the bolt or the nut, whatever it was, or maybe it was a bolt nut combination, ended up out there by that security guard. Remember?
Yeah, it could have been the nut still on the end of the bolt. Huh? I never thought about that.
Yeah. How
that happened, I don't know, because that's 90 degrees, exactly 90 degrees from where this flange connects to the turbine, right?
Right.
And it bounced off something, flew clear through the skin of the turbine building, the turbine deck, and that's probably 50 feet, wouldn't you say?
Oh, at least, yeah.
After that, tore through that metal and landed out in the parking lot. And a security guard picked it up on his way in the morning. Yeah.
That's wild.
Yeah. The that front standard, that the IP turbine and secondary, and the other turbine part is surrounded in a cabinet, so to speak. It's in an enclosure. So it's just, you don't see any of that piping or anything. It's just, when it's all put together, it's an enclosure. But the top of the enclosure had that grating on it. The typical grating on the walks and everything was about 1 inch thick, real close, welded metal.
Yeah.
When that popped off, of course, that was sitting right there. So it took a piece of that grating, and it ended up on the 77 foot around the deaerator, wrapped around the pipe. Yeah.
Jeez. Really amazing that no one got hurt, that no one was out there right at that moment,
Yeah, very, very fortunate, because my assistant shift supervisor, and I want to say that was Ted Slater, but I can't remember for sure. And then an instrument tech were en route to meet each other right there at the front standard, and they were just maybe 3 minutes away.
Really? Wow. That's amazing.
Because you don't know, the flash of steam just in the immediate area could have been devastating.
Absolutely. Yeah. That could kill you. That could kill you in an instant. Yeah.
So the fix on this kind of astounded me. I didn't know what to expect, but what they did is they found some new bolts, and they took some these welding heating blankets where you preheat metal before you weld it. They heated that pipe, and they put a cum along, and they pulled the pipe back up to position and rebolted it. And what they did is they changed the sequence of the valves from the controls so that they'd open in a different sequence, because they just through some analysis, they figured the length of each pipe had a lot to do with that, setting up that frequency. And the first part of that shift, in retrospect, at the end of shift, we were all talking about it, that everybody was on edge right before that happened. And everybody could recall now that there was, at that time, that there was some kind of hum in the air.
Really?
That you just kind of conscious. It's like going into a room with a fluorescent bulb that's burning. You're there for a while, you just ignore it. But that we all recalled that.
Wow.
Something a little off. Something was a little off there. But.
Well, I came in on day shift the next day, and I remember looking into Unit 3 or going into Unit 3 basement there, and just the debris and the humidity was still there, and it was just so quiet. I mean, all three units were down, and it was eerie, I guess would be a good word for it,
Well, so this happened about, like I said, 2:30, and there was so much adrenaline running in everybody right after that. And we knew we had to get the unit down, so everything shut down, drained what needed to be drained, and went home.
Yeah. There you go. Come back in tomorrow night. Wow. Yeah. Mark, I really appreciate your time, buddy. This is a good interview. It's good to get this story from you, the one who was there. I mean, literally right there when all of this went down, and hear that. Is there anything else that you want to mention about that, or that, you want to take this conversation in a different direction, or have we covered everything that you wanted to say?
I think so. I don't know what else I could say about that particular event. There was, I think what happened is that GE went away from sequential opening and went to full, what they call full arc opening on that in the future. I think that's, at least I'd heard that, but I didn't know. I don't know for sure. Yeah. One thing, Mark Bailey was at Coronado when I went to Coronado. In fact, he met me at the door when I went there. And we went right up on the turbine deck, and the turbine, those were 400 megawatt units, about half the size of Navajo's units, Navajo Generating Station. And he said, "Yeah, here are our turbines." I couldn't help it. I said, "Hey, I've destroyed bigger turbines than that." I don't know if you want to use that or not.
Put that on your resume.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Well, Mark, I won't take up any more of your time then. Man, I appreciate you carving out this time to spend with me today. I know you could be doing other things, and it's good.
Oh, no.
It's just so good to capture your story and to preserve that, for others to hear. And really do appreciate your time. Appreciate you.
Well, that was just a snippet of my time. I had a lot of enjoyable moments in just the training there and whatnot. It was just great. Yeah.
I'll tell you, it was hard to, I was there filming the stacks coming down, and I missed the precipitators, but I was there for the boilers coming down too. Yeah. And man, that was hard. I mean, that was kind of gut wrenching, and just to watch that thing crumble down, because all those memories.
To go up there, but they said the area was so restricted. I wanted so much to go up there and just watch it, but
right. I tried to get on plant site, but it didn't work.
Mm-hmm.
So I was able to film it from the highway.
I was going to tell you, I still have my NGS. Is everything backwards?
No. Everything that looks perfect.
Still on my button.
That's great.
And my first employee safety manual.
Really? Look at that! Wow.
There's 14 characters in it. That's
great. Look at this. Good stuff, man. Very good stuff.
My daughter was born there at the Page Hospital, and I thought about mentioning that she works for SRP, and I was thinking that she's probably been there about 10 years. But yesterday, she informed me that today is her 17th anniversary.
Really?
SRP, yeah. Wow. Time flies. It's amazing.
Time flies, and the longevity of people's careers there, really speaks volumes as far as the good place that SRP is to work.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
For the first couple of years, I just kicked myself for leaving because I really missed the lake and the countryside. And, the whole place was wide open. It was like Wild West days back then. Everybody had a 4-wheel drive and a boat.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And things weren't closed off like they are now. You could take your 4-wheel drive and go out there and boldly go where no one's gone before, and, it was a blast. It was a lot of fun. I had a 51 Willys Jeep and an old government Dodge Power Wagon that I bought at an auction. And we were always out booning around. I ended up selling that Jeep to Ralph Nodal. Remember Ralph? Yeah. I ended up selling that to him. And he was in Coronado at the time. Actually, he came back during the strike. He was at Coronado and came back during the strike, I guess, to work. And that's when I sold my 51 Willys Jeep to him. That thing had a 327 in it. And it was a blast. It was like a dune buggy on steroids.
Yeah.
So.
Hey, let me know if I messed up somewhere. Maybe we can redo it or something.
Oh, you didn't mess up, man. You did perfect. This was awesome.
Good.
Oh, hey.
That's great.
There's the alarm.
Yeah.
Mark, thanks, buddy. I'll let you go. Hey, I hope you enjoyed that conversation with Mark Avery. I want to remind you can visit me online at Navajo Generating Station. Remembered, the web address is navajogeneratingstation.org. That's navajogeneratingstation.org. Or you can find Navajo Generating Station Remembered on YouTube. My website contains interviews just like this one, along with photos of the construction of Navajo Generating Station, the demolition of Navajo Generating Station, and videos of the demolition of Navajo Generating Station. So again, that web address is navajogeneratingstation.org, and I hope to see you there. Thanks.